Here are the top 10 most upvoted and shocking real travel experiences. You won't believe it, but number 10 is the USA. The only country in the world I swear I'll never visit again is the United States of America. I spent 2 months there, Washington, D.C., New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Honestly, I wanted to leave after the first week, but my parents convinced me to stay longer. I still can't wrap my head around the tipping culture. It's not just expected, it's demanded. Prices are never what the label says. Are workers seriously so underpaid they need tips just to survive? And if you don't tip, they actually get angry. I'll tip if the service is good, sure, but I'm not tipping just because someone asks me to. That feels insulting. If you ask for a tip, you're getting nothing from me. Then there's the political correctness. It's insane. Every time I spoke to someone, I felt like I had to walk on eggshells, say one wrong word, and suddenly you're racist, sexist, or homophobic. I don't even have to be that cautious with my boss back home. It's like people are just looking for a reason to get offended. One time, in a seafood place in San Francisco, a black man came in reeking like he hadn't showered in decades. The smell was unbearable. I paid and left. I asked the staff why they let him in, and they said they couldn't stop him or they'd get in trouble for discriminating people of color. And the drugs. People using weed right out in the open, on the streets, even on the train. I've never seen so much pot in my life, and I hate the smell. I'd even choose to go to the US that first time, but I can promise you I'll never make that mistake again. Wow, it's hard to believe, but South Korea is here too. South Korea, without a doubt, the worst experience I've had. I work in IT consulting and have traveled to over 40 countries for work. And honestly, South Korea was the most unfriendly place I've ever been, especially as an Indian. I visited in 2022 with my French friend, and the racism hit me the moment we landed at Incheon Airport. I got zero acknowledgement from the staff. No smiles, no greetings, while my friend was treated like royalty. Smiles, warmth, attention. They were practically wagging their tails for him. It was bizarre. We stayed for a week, and our experiences couldn't have been more different. Koreans were constantly trying to get my friend's attention, while I got cold stares and silent treatment. We were both creeped out, but for very different reasons. And honestly, this obsession with appearance, surgeries on jaws, chins, noses, says a lot about the culture. I also spoke to travelers from the Philippines and Indonesia, and they all said the same thing. If you're from a poor country, or don't look rich, or light-skinned, you'll feel it. Hard. Doesn't matter if you're well-dressed or educated. Even people flipping burgers looked at me like I didn't belong. You might say this kind of stuff happens everywhere, and maybe it does, but in Korea, it was constant. Easily 50 times in a week. That's not a few bad apples. That's a systemic problem. So yeah, if you're South Asian or from places like Malaysia, Indonesia, or Thailand, think twice before visiting. You might not be treated the way you expect or deserve. And now, we're unexpectedly heading to Italy. So, I arrived in Rome and, first of all, checked into my Airbnb, had a snack downstairs, all good. But at dinner, I ran into my first scam. The owner pushed me to pay in cash, clearly trying to avoid taxes. I said no and paid by card, but that already left a bad taste. The next day, I bought a pizza and handed them a fresh €10 note. They said they had no change, and gave me back a different €10, which turned out to be fake. I took it to the police, and after some effort, they finally agreed to swap it for a real one. Then came Venice. Ferries were on strike when I got there. A woman tried to pickpocket a Russian tourist near me, but her husband caught her and held her until help arrived. I called the police to report it. They picked up, listened for a second, and just hung up. Florence was the only place I actually liked. In Cinque Terre, trains were packed and late. Platforms were full. The infrastructure overwhelmed. I overheard a taxi driver telling another to drive in circles and pretend not to speak English. I skipped that ride. And before all of this, I'd also been to Sicily. Main problems there? Bad transport and trash. Cancelled trains, no warnings. Locals were kind enough to arrange a bus just for us. Great people. Broken system. I've only seen this level of pollution in developing countries. Seeing millennia-old cities covered in graffiti and trash was honestly depressing. I won't be going back. Italy felt completely dysfunctional. There are better places in Europe. India ranks just one spot higher than Italy on this list. Done that, been there, and got the Bombay belly. Seriously though, what hit me the hardest about India was the poverty. When we were leaving Mumbai at night, heading to the airport, I saw people sleeping on the sidewalks for miles. Literally every inch of pavement was taken. Rows and rows of people, some even sleeping head to foot in pairs because there wasn't enough space. In Jaipur, we passed countless street kids begging as we drove through the city in a taxi. Most of them looked like they'd never had a proper bath in their lives. The smell in some areas? Unbearable. It was everywhere. Cows were digging through garbage in the middle of the streets, and even though they're considered sacred by some, they were clearly starving and malnourished. Just like so many other animals there, it was honestly hard to watch. And then, in the middle of all that, we heard about one of the richest families in India throwing a wedding. They rented out five-star hotels for the guests and even flew in Ricky Martin for a private performance just because the bride was a fan. Everyone we personally met was incredibly kind and helpful, no doubt about that, but I'm not going back. India was just too much. Surprisingly, right in the middle of the list, Saudi Arabia. My wife joined me on a business trip to Saudi Arabia. We booked a hotel that looked amazing, great location, beautiful design, and fantastic amenities, or so we thought. Turns out almost nothing was available to my wife just because she's a woman. The pool, men only. The spa, men only. Some restaurants, also men only. So while I was working, she literally couldn't even grab lunch alone. And no, this wasn't during Ramadan. She had to stay covered and basically avoid all interaction with men. After just one day, we'd had enough. We rebooked at an American hotel where thankfully she could move freely and order her own food. From there, we flew to Singapore and the difference was huge. Yes, Singapore is strict, but it never felt hostile. The city was clean, safe, and most importantly, my wife had freedom. She could explore, eat out, shop, all without needing me next to her. Saudi Arabia might be modernizing on paper, but in real life, it's not for women travelers. Now we're heading to Africa. Hello, Kenya. A few years ago, we went to Kenya for a scuba diving trip. Nature was incredible, the beach hotel was beautiful, and the food was honestly great. But at night, the beaches told a very different story. And now, I understand why the hotel staff warned us not to go out there after dark. Of course, curiosity got the better of us and we walked to the beach one evening just for a few minutes. What we saw was hard to forget. Dozens of local women, many very young, were clearly offering certain services for extremely low prices. It was upsetting, and only later did I read about the deep-rooted issues of sex tourism and HIV in the area. Driving around during the day in a small local bus, I started noticing the massive contrast. Right outside those fancy resorts were thousands of people living in poverty. Makeshift homes built from corrugated metal, no running water, barely any infrastructure. What made it worse was how other tourists acted like none of that existed. They just sipped cocktails and sunbathed, as if everything outside the resort walls wasn't their concern. And then, once we were back home, I got sick. After a few medical tests, they found a latent TB infection. Turns out, I brought back more than just memories. It's also worth noting we stayed in one of the safer areas of the country, but many non-tourist zones can be far more dangerous. And that applies not just to Kenya. Even in countries that seem more stable like South Africa, daytime robberies and shootings still happen in broad daylight. The smallest country on our list, Brunei. I've been to around 50 countries so far, but I won't be going back to Brunei. The whole place felt incredibly bland. Sure, the Sultan's Mosque is absolutely stunning, but once you've seen it, that's kind of it. Nothing else really stands out. Public transport? Basically non-existent. Not because the country can't afford it, but because everyone drives. If you actually wait for a bus, good luck. It's rare, slow, and I honestly can't even remember how long I stood there waiting. So unless you rent a car, which isn't cheap, getting around is a real headache. Brunei also isn't exactly backpacker friendly. There are some budget hostels now, but they're usually far from the center and not to everyone's taste. When I factored in how much I'd spend on taxis just to get to town, it ended up costing about the same as staying somewhere mid-range. Then there's the nightlife, or the complete lack of it. Alcohol is restricted, if not totally banned, and bars or social spots are nearly non-existent. I once asked a local what people do for fun on weekends. Their answer, we drive to Malaysia. That pretty much says it all. Brunei is maybe worth seeing once, for the Sultan's Palace, the floating village of Kampung Air, and a taste of nasi ketok, but only once. There's really no reason to return. Pyramids, resorts, but what's really happening in Egypt? I went on an all-inclusive vacation to Hurghada, Egypt. The food was bad across the board, except for the pastries, which we later learned were imported. Drinks were supposed to be free, but bartenders still pressured guests for tips and watered everything down. One bartender even made an inappropriate 9/11 joke, which was honestly disturbing. Most people ended up getting sick. Locals said it was likely from the water or ice. What made it worse? The same guys working around the pool also worked at the pharmacy, where they charged crazy prices for basic meds once tourists got sick. The pool staff ran a towel scam. They'd steal your hotel towel, then charge you for a replacement if you bought your own towel to avoid this. They took that too. I even saw them take books and belongings left on sunbeds and sell them across the street. And then there was the inappropriate behavior toward women, especially young girls around the pool. When confronted, the staff just claimed they didn't understand English. Outside the hotel was just as intense. Street vendors constantly tried to pull us into shops and push products on us, sometimes literally placing things on you, like oils or hats, and demanding money afterward. Even the airport felt chaotic. It was packed with vendors and little actual security. The only bright spot of the trip was a small beachside shisha bar, the only place where the staff were friendly, respectful, and didn't try to hustle anyone. There's probably more to Egypt than Hurghada, but after that trip, I'm not willing to risk finding out. Off to the Caribbean, let's talk about Jamaica. I visited Jamaica with a friend for an all-inclusive vacation. As long as we stayed on the resort, everything was great. Good food, friendly staff, relaxing vibes. But the moment we stepped outside, the experience changed completely. Locals constantly approached us trying to sell anything and everything. Souvenirs, home-cooked meals, various substances like herbs and mushrooms, and even offered to introduce us to local women. It wasn't just persistent, it was non-stop. Even wearing headphones didn't help. People would wave in your face, tap your shoulder, and in one case, someone even tried to pull the headphones off just to get your attention. We decided to check out a local beach bar during the day. At first it seemed chill. A few guys came over to chat and we stayed polite. One asked if he could sit with us and have a beer, and we said sure. Then someone else came by with a bag of aloe vera after seeing my sunburn. I said thanks, and he immediately asked for a couple dollars. I didn't even want it, but paid just to avoid a scene. When we got up to leave, a man who seemed like a security guard insisted I had to pay for the other guy's drinks. I never agreed to that, but didn't feel like arguing, especially when the guy had a baton in his hand. So we just paid and left. To be fair, Jamaica has beautiful beaches and great music, but outside the resort bubble, it was overwhelming. Too much pressure, too many scams, and no real chance to relax. I'm glad I experienced it once, but I wouldn't go back. Topping our list today, wow, it's the United Arab Emirates. I visited the UAE, mainly Dubai, and honestly, I left with zero desire to ever come back. Everywhere we went, people tried to charge ridiculous prices. At the Burj Khalifa, they wanted $70 for a photo, the kind you get at a theme park for a few bucks. A taxi driver once tried to charge us $40 for a 1-mile ride. When we pushed back, he acted insulted and drove off. And beyond the money grabs, the whole city just felt fake. Beautiful buildings, yes, but no soul. You can't even walk anywhere. It's all highways, underpasses, and massive distances. Try exploring on foot, good luck. And there's a darker side most tourists don't see, or prefer to ignore. The city is built on the backs of migrant workers, underpaid, overworked, often living in packed conditions with their passports taken away. You'll see them working in 40 degrees, while others sip lattes in luxury malls. Public behavior is heavily policed, and even a minor argument or misunderstanding can get you in serious legal trouble. Locals are always right, the justice system is not on your side. We were constantly told, don't get involved in any local conflicts. Even if someone's clearly been mistreated, intervening can get you arrested or fined. 3 nights in Dubai cost me more than 2 full weeks in places like India or Indonesia, countries that felt alive, real, and welcoming. The UAE looks impressive on the surface, but scratch a little and it's just glass, steel, and emptiness. If you enjoyed this format, subscribe and hit that like button and let us know in the comments what's one country you'd never want to visit and why.